Arizona is on its way to pass a bill that is likened to a modern-day version of Jim Crow. Now, this time, instead of discrimination based on race, discrimination on sexual orientation would instead be allowed. Now, the kicker with this bill is that this discrimination is actually backed up under the guise of, hey, religious freedom. That's our religious freedom. Now, the legislation is called HB 2153, and that's the House version. Senate version is SB 1062. Now, some of the points on this legislation would basically expand the state's definition of the exercise of religion to include both the practice and observance of religion. It will allow someone to assert legal claim of free exercise of religion regardless of whether the government is a party to the proceedings. It would expand those protected under the state's free exercise of religion law to any individual, association, partnership, corporation, church, religious assembly, or institution, or other business organization. And it would establish wording that says that in order to assert a free exercise of religion defense, the individual, business, or church must establish that its action is motivated by religious belief, that the belief is sincerely held, and that the belief is substantially burdened. Representative Steve Montenegro, who is a supporter of this bill, says that, quote, we don't want the government coming in and forcing somebody to act against their religious sacred faith beliefs or having to sell out if you were a small business owner. Opponents of this bill say that it could block members of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community from access to nearly any business or service. House Minority Leader Chad Campbell, the Democrat, says the result of this bill is discrimination, period. This bill is going to hurt the LGBT community. To which bill sponsors Eddie Farnsworth, interesting name, said that, quote, a business owner can already decide not to hire somebody who is gay or lesbian. This doesn't change that. You guys are trying to make this something that doesn't exist. These are small changes. Representative John Kavanaugh said that this bill protects the religious from persecution. Because, you know, religious persecution tends to be a big problem here in America. Christians are being all sorts of persecuted, right? Now, he said, quote, the descendants of the people who fled religious persecution are now being criminally prosecuted by politically correct governments. All this bill does is protect the religious freedoms that the people who began this country came here to establish, to which I just have to say, ha. I don't believe it. That is bullshit. Okay. So, the effect of this bill seems pretty obvious. It could, in fact, affect pretty much entire lives, and it will lead to segregation, essentially, of gay people from everyone else. Now, there is a good chance that this bill will pass. It is Arizona. It passed through the Senate, it passed through the House, and it's waiting on Governor Jan Brewer's desk. Now, what do you guys think about this?
Yeah, so I'm going to go out and say that this bill is probably an overreach for a problem that kind of does exist. Because we've heard the stories about people suing cake makers who don't want to make wedding cakes for, like, gay weddings. And I think that's despicable, and you should just make the cake for whatever customer you want. But I don't want the government to force a private business to render a service that they don't want to. So this is like, what they're like, if they were just trying to tinker with the public accommodations clause of the Civil Rights Act, then I think that would be different. But we've seen in this bill and in the other state, I don't remember which one, where they're getting more into government being able to discriminate and like larger like places being able to discriminate, and I'm not in favor of that. But if you're like, to me, if somebody doesn't want to make your wedding cake, like, the proper response is to go to a different cake maker, not to sue them and have them be ordered by a judge to make a wedding cake for you. Like, I don't like it, and I think that those places should go out of business. They're turning away customers. I think people should boycott and all that good stuff. But like, the government can't force you to enter into a contract with somebody that you don't want to. And I'd hate to I hate to say it, but you do have some right to discriminate. That's all I got.
Jordan, you have anything to add?
Before I speak as someone who's acting like they have knowledge, I just want to make sure I'm clear. The Arizona bill, is this strictly about like hiring people,
It's not just
based,
about
or also providing services?
providing services. Any place, any corporation, any business, anything like that that wants to deny a service. Say you wanted to get an apartment as a gay person, and that apartment owner says, well, I'm sorry, that's against my religious beliefs. You can't live here. That's what this will allow. And it will not allow those people that are discriminated against to be able to file a lawsuit based on that.
Okay, yeah.
It's pretty draconian to me.
It does, and it's I say this a lot, and Sean's already said it tonight. A lot of times there's issues that I certainly don't disagree. I disagree with or whatever, but I don't know that it's the government's role to come in and force people to agree with me. This one is such a big thing. Like, there's so many different ways this could play out that some of them I feel like there would be a legitimate role for the government to step in. Other ones there's not. A lot. I agree with a lot of what Sean said. Like the whole cake thing. Go somewhere else, get your cake. Boycott that place and let them go out of business. I think is the way to handle that. But then at the same time, though, I also feel like there's a case to be made that it's not government overreach for the government to say, hey, you guys have to make a cake, because the making of a cake is not a religious service. Like, that's a completely secular thing. Now it is my understanding, and I think Sean kind of alluded to this, like the language in the Civil Rights Bill and the Civil Rights Act doesn't really give the same kind of rights to LGBTQT as it does to ethnicities or whatever. And so if we want to go back and revisit the Civil Rights Act, and tweak that language to bring them into the already existing law, then we definitely need to do that. And then you've got a legal case here. But until that's done, I don't know that you have a legal case. So I think that's the way that you should pursue that, is make the law apply and then enforce the law. But yeah, like, then the thing here, this is something where like these right-wing nuts are. It happens time and time again. I don't want to bog us down in different examples, but like they're going to totally they're going to get what they asked for, and they're going to regret it 10, 20 years down the line, because what they're doing is they're asking the state to come in and be a religious arbiter and to dictate what is and isn't their religion for them. And that's totally...
I would also argue that these people are attempting to use the government in order to be able to freely discriminate.
Yeah, but
sure.
But to point out, like, they are, like, I'm saying that my position is, it's not the greatest position, right? But there are limits on it, right? Like, you can't run a hospital and say, I don't want to treat gay people. Like, you can't do that. If somebody comes in from a car accident, like, that doesn't matter. And hospitals get government money, so like those should be regulated. Like, emergency services and all that. Like, you can't do that. But
what if it's a Catholic hospital?
Huh? I mean, Catholic hospitals get government money. Like, keep it real. Like, those are the... George Bush is the one who set them up for that. Those are like faith-based initiatives, if you've heard of those. But no, what I'm saying is like a random like restaurant, or the wedding cake example that I use is because it's a real example. Like, it's like, I can't get over it. It's wrong and forget about the religious basis, just based on what a contract is. A contract is two people entering into an agreement based on voluntary consent. Like, it's wrong for the government to force a business to make a cake or take photographs. That was the other case, that the wedding photographer didn't want to go to a gay wedding. It's wrong for them to force you to do something like that. That, yeah, you're discriminating, but you're not like irreparably harming somebody. If you're in a hospital and you discriminate against a patient because they're black or gay or transgender or whatever, you're irreparably harming that person. But if you're saying, look, I'm not going to make that cake for you, there's a cake shop down the street that will make that cake for you, like, that doesn't hurt anybody. Like, it's annoying and you should boycott, but that is not the same thing. And that's, and like, well, that's Sean, problem with the Public Accommodations Clause of the Civil Rights Act. It's not. It treats all discrimination equally, and doesn't discriminate between different types of discrimination.
And so it fails to discriminate discrimination.
Yeah. I thought that was hilarious.
All right. Well, look, you keep bringing up the cake thing, and while I do agree with you on some point about that, since it's a cake, it's a non-vital service. The problem with this law is that if it gets signed into law, it's so broad-based. What's to prevent a water company that says, and I know I'm throwing out weird hypotheticals, bear with me here. If it's a water company or a grocery store that says, yeah, you can't shop here. All right, you're going to go to the next grocery store. Well, what if you're in an area that's not exactly friendly to gay people, and they're not allowing you to get certain services in that area, services that you need, you might need to, I don't know, survive? That's what this opens up the door to. And maybe I'm going a little bit too far with this example, but I see sort of a slippery slope.
And the thing is I agree with you there, and that's what I'm saying. You have to be able to rank services that you get, because there's some services you can't discriminate. The example I use, the hospital, the water company is a great example. Like, we found out you're gay at the water company, so you don't get any water, right? And it's Arizona, so if you don't get any water, like, that's a death sentence. But like, there's the reason that this was proposed and the reason that it has support is because there are cases, and I don't want to be like overly like rude to the people who sue, who sued the cake maker or the wedding photographer, but there's these cases where the government really shouldn't be involved in that transaction, and it's weird. Like, it's unusually weird for a gay couple to sue somebody who doesn't like them to make them participate in their wedding. Like, it's those are the cases that spawn this, and I'm not in favor of this law in general, but if you could have some kind of like middle ground where if it's a non-vital service like a wedding or
for you, you know, being as somebody who doesn't like government intrusion whatsoever, say that, look, if you have a problem, you two hash it out.
Right. And the thing is, and it doesn't even have to be a religious thing. It could, like, to me, it's just your right to contract.
But the religious angle, I think the religious angle, I know I keep cutting you off, but I think the religious angle, though, is the angle that they're trying to play to get this discrimination legal.
Right.
I realize that's where I'm jumping in. I'm jumping in here, guys, because I didn't really get to finish my point. I'm not going to get into an argument with Rand Paul over here about whether or not the Civil Rights Act is constitutional, but I will say this: like, I want to come, from the Christian perspective, like I do on the evolution debate, and tell creationists why they're stupid as Christians. I want to come here as the Christian in the room and tell the people pushing for this law why it's stupid as Christians. Like this, you are asking the government to tell you what your religion is in this point. You're asking the government to become a religious arbiter on your behalf. And what I mean by that is, like, what you're saying here is that the government can come in and say, no, you don't have to do this because this is against your religion. Well, you know what also is against, let's stick with the cake thing, with the marriage thing. Does this bakery have any problem making cakes for people who aren't Christians? Because that would be supporting a non-Christian marriage. Does this bakery make cakes for people who are divorced and are remarrying? Because that would definitely be going against the Christian definition of marriage. Jesus never talks about gay marriage. He flat out says divorce is wrong specifically. It's one of the very few things he gets specific about. Jesus talks all the time about loving your neighbors. He talks in these principles. But one of the few specific examples he ever gives in all the New Testaments where he says a thing is flat out wrong is Christian divorce. But obviously they're making case for those people left and right. This isn't about religion. This is about bigotry. And so the only way to enforce this law is then you're asking the state to come in and make sure that you're enforcing it equally. And you're telling the state to come in and tell you, no, you can't give these people a cake because they were divorced. Or because you gave these divorced people a cake, you can't deny the gay people a cake. You're telling the state to lord over your religion. And nobody wants that, man. Like, secularists don't want that, and religious people don't want that. That's it's crazy, but that's exactly what these people are asking for. And in 20 or 30 years, whenever the state starts using it that way, because that's the way these laws always work, gay marriage is a perfect example of this. The reason marriage is a civil institution and not a religious institution in America is because our Puritan fathers wanted to, they rejected anything Catholic for the sake of it being Catholic. And in the Catholic Church, it was a religious institution, not a state institution. So they put it in the hands of the state because they thought Catholics were wrong. And then now, because of that, gay marriage is something that we're dealing with, and the church has forfeited all rights to be against it because they made it a civil institution. So now we're going to start making Christian action a civil institution. Then, we get what's coming to us in 30 years whenever the state's telling us what it means to be Christian.
And going back to your point about bringing the government in, remember, this is from the party of small government.
No, but
get out of our lives. Get out of our lives. It's complete rank hypocrisy.
The thing is, and look, I'm not in favor of this, obviously, because I think it's way too broad. But to give you more background on my position, when they passed those laws that said you couldn't smoke in bars and in restaurants, I was against that too, right? And the reason I was against that is because it's your private property, it's your restaurant, it's your bar. And the government can't regulate behavior. In my opinion, they shouldn't regulate behavior that goes on in private establishments. Like, if I go over to Jeff's house and Jeff says, "Oh, you could smoke in my house," then I would smoke in his house. If he says I can't, then I won't. Like, to me, there's an arbitrary distinction between your private home and your business. Now, of course, it's not a perfect analogy because, like I said, hospitals, water, electricity, there's all these services where you can't have any of that discrimination in there. But if you had it in a case where it's small businesses or even large businesses, because McDonald's isn't going to do this, and Walmart's not going to do this, they would be crazy too. But if you had it in non-essential businesses where they could, and it doesn't have to be under the religious veneer. It's just, to me, it's a contract issue, where they could say, hey, look, I don't want to make a cake for you. I don't want to take pictures for you. I don't want to do this for you. It just seems weird on the other end for somebody to sue them and force them to allow that. To me, and I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a gay person, right, which I can't do, right? But if I was getting married and the place didn't want to make me a cake and the place didn't want me to take pictures, it's extremely weird for me to see myself suing that place so I can have a cake that they didn't want me to make. And
but Sean, it's not about the cake. It's not about the cake. It was about, hey, you discriminated against me, right? I'm pretty sure they don't even give a fuck about the cake. I know if I were in that position, and I know I'm going into ifs, but if I were in that position, I wouldn't give a shit about the cake. It'd be the fact that you discriminated against me because of my lifestyle choice that you have absolutely zero business getting involved in. I came to you for a service. You didn't want me to have that service simply because of the way that I live my life. Yeah, now, but do I agree that they should have sued? I don't know. I think that was I guess it was her right, especially under Oregon law.
Yeah, but it is about the cake because those are the cases that we're talking about.
I don't believe that. I do not agree with that. It's not about the cake. It's about the discrimination itself.
Yeah, but
the cake is just a symbol.
But you're allowed, in my opinion, and as wrong as it sounds, you're allowed to discriminate. Everybody discriminates. I see the cake graphic. Everybody discriminates.
The cake is a lie, right?
But everybody discriminates who is allowed in their house, and people could throw you out of their business for not wearing shoes or not wearing the right jacket or all these different things that happen. You're allowed to discriminate in non-essential services. If you get government money in any way, then you're done. You're going to you should go to jail. If you're a doctor and you refuse somebody treatment, you should go to jail. But if in these small cases, and my whole argument is around these small cases, not this law in general, because this law is too broad. In these small cases, I don't think that the government should get involved. I get that the principle is bad, but you shut them down, you boycott them, you tell people about them, you rate them on Yelp. like that guy who owns the steakhouse that they all made it like they changed his steakhouse.
And they made it into the best gay bar in town.
Yeah, like you go after their reputation, but you don't sue them to force them to comply with you. Like you have to try and convince them, and if not, convince people not to associate with them. Like to me, it's about freedom of association, and it can cut both ways, and you got to make sure that these people who discriminate learn that it does cut both ways.
But just to be on the side of clarity, Oregon law says they are able to sue. So that's why, I mean, that was their recourse for that.
But to me that law is wrong. Like your recourse should be to go somewhere else and take your money somewhere else. Like it's dumb from a capitalist point of view to turn away any percentage of your customers. So like I think that law is wrong. You shouldn't sue. And if I was a judge, I would look at it. I'd be like, I can see what the law is, but it doesn't make any sense. Like I'm not going to order him. I can't see ordering somebody to make you a cake or putting them in jail if they don't. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like,
well, personally, I wouldn't want to do business with someone like that. I'm just saying that I don't. It's legal under Oregon law to be able to sue. That's what the law is. I'm not going to argue the merits of the law, whether it's a good law or a bad law. I'm just saying that under Oregon law, that is what it is, and you can sue for discrimination based on sexual orientation. And
yeah, but
look, that's not the only thing you can discriminate about. And going back to this Arizona law, I love how this guy Farnsworth pointed out that a business owner can already discriminate against against hiring somebody based on their sexual orientation.
Well,
and they're like, yeah, so.
I'll give you one other example. In Seattle, after the TSA started groping people, a lot of restaurants in Seattle said that they wouldn't serve TSA agents, right? Mm-hmm. And to me, that's perfectly fine. Like you should be allowed to refuse service to people who you think that you don't like. And I don't have a problem with gay people. I do have a problem with TSA people. But in order to be consistent, like you gotta take the good with the bad. And no, I'm not taking any flights anytime soon.
I said, I'm not arguing the merits of that Oregon law. I'm just saying that under that law, they had the right to be able to sue, and that's the way that the law was set up. Personally, I wouldn't care enough to sue. I'd be like, all right, you don't want my money? My money's just as good as yours? Okay, fuck off. I'll go find somebody better.
Yeah, I'd one-star them 100 times. Like, I'd go make 100 Yelp accounts and one-star them if they ever pulled some shit like that with me.
Of course. But anyway, we should probably move on to the next story unless, Jordan, you want to jump in here.
Yeah, well, I was just wanting to, like, okay, this is one of those things, I know I've said this a lot on the show, I keep coming back to it, I kind of hate myself for saying this, but, like, I kind of agree with Sean. You know, when it comes to the, I mean, a business has a right of refusal. Like, that's a thing. However, I will say this. We, as a society, have come together, and it's represented in the Civil Rights Act, and said that we believe, you know, whether as a matter of decency, you know, whatever the justification is, we believe as a society that there should be some limits to that. And so if we want to include language that includes the gay community in that, then I think we should. And once we do that, then you can start suing people that don't make your cakes. And that's the way to do it. But I do want to say this, though. Like, whenever it comes to being able to not employ people based on something like that, that I can totally come against, because that's taking away people's livelihoods there, man.
That's essential. But, that's an essential thing that you need. It's just like, almost like the water example. You kind of need that to survive. You need a job to survive.
Yeah, yeah. So like, I'm more torn on the, like, who do you have to bake a cake for? Like, that to me, like, that's a tougher thing to talk about. But, like, unless you are a religious institution, you know, and the hospitals, I don't know whether, again, when it comes to providing the service a hospital provides, you don't get to discriminate. When it comes to your employees, or when it comes, you know, whatever, like, if you're a religious institution there, maybe you can. But now, obviously, I don't think most hospitals are going to do that. I think hospitals want the best doctors they can get, and they're not going to care what their religion is. Now, you might see them fire a janitor because of their religion, and I think that's pretty hypocritical. But you know, they're going to take the best doctors they can get, regardless of religion. But as long as the state's not making churches marry gay people or making, some kind of religious counseling service hire somebody that, they don't want to hire based on religion or whatever, like, as long as the state's not doing that, I'm a little more open to the state coming in and saying, no, you got to hire this gay person if they're qualified for the job. Like, to me, that seems like you're messing with somebody's livelihood.
Well, you shouldn't be able to, especially on the job, discriminate just based on what you do in your private life. That seems like an employer intrusion into your life.
I would differentiate hiring from firing for a reason, because if you don't get hired, like, there's no real way to prove why you didn't get hired. But if you get fired specifically because you're gay, then that's a better case. And from a legal standpoint, I would differentiate that and say that firing.
You're able to prove that a little bit better.
Yeah, because it's more provable. But to the overall point, I'm in favor of gay marriage, right? And one of the reasons I'm in favor of gay marriage is because it doesn't affect anybody except for the two people who are getting married, and I believe that they have every right to enter into a contract with each other. But if you are forcing people to participate in their wedding, in the limited cases where I would be in favor of a law like this, the very, very limited cases, if you're forcing people to participate in your wedding, then that kind of gets at one of my arguments, and you're giving ammunition to conservatives who are anti-gay marriage. So I would say you can't discriminate in probably 87% of cases, hospitals, certain firings, of what you call water, heat, electricity, like all these different cases. You can't, police obviously can't discriminate, but in these small cases where it's not, like, it's bad and it's bad, but you won't be irreparably harmed, and you can redress it better by, boycotting the place, then I'm in favor of not in favor, but I believe that people do have a right to discriminate, no matter how much I dislike the people who do so.
I think what it comes down to is that, and I'll agree with this, is that in certain cases, like the cake example, you do have a right to be a bigot, and that person has a right to be able to go and find a cake and buy a cake from someone who's not a bigot. And I think that would be the better way to go. But like I said with Oregon, they did have the right to challenge it via the law. Whether or not we agree with that or disagree with that, that's not really for us to interpret it at this point. So.
And by the way, if I had the power to force a fundamentalist Christian to make me a cake against their will, and they had to make the cake I wanted, it would be a penis.
No doubt.
With a cross on it. Like, I mean, that's what I keep imagining, is like they're making them cook like a penis cake with like a cross on it or something like that. And that's like, it's so messed up. Just go to a different cake shop in that case. Right? Hospitals got to treat you, right? We all agree to that. But I'm just saying, in certain cases, you can't do stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. As far as the law goes, it is a disaster, and so, it's disastrous, the kind of laws, the broad, sweeping, general laws that are coming out in some of these conservative states that are trying to hide under the cloak of religious freedom. Hey, if you enjoyed this clip, make sure to like and leave a comment below, or even share. Sharing is caring. If you want to see more TYT Nation videos, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/TYT Nation. Thank you for watching.